When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Sachs,
And I'm Lori Sachs.
and today we're joined again by Olivier and Hilda, documentarians of the film Forget Me Not.
Our last episode ended without the update and the real conversation of what it was like for them, for their experience, and some of the impacts of these IEPs and this journey and how it's important and the changes that need to be made. So they were kind enough to come back and discuss with us very openly and honestly, just like they did with their film. And it's these conversations when as parents, we realize that we are not alone in this fight and this advocacy. And it gives us the power to stand up against a system that is clearly hoping that they will be able to fool us into thinking that our children don't belong.
So please welcome Olivier and Hilda.
Welcome back, guys. I'm so glad that you could join us again today because when we were speaking about your film, there's so many things that I wanted to visit and talk about. So thank you for making the time to come back and visit with us today.
Thank you for
Thanks.
having us back.
At the end of our last conversation, we briefly tapped on when you were making the film what your natural end was, and you had discussed that IEP because you were told that Emilio had really done such a great job and belonged in the classroom, and
You had a lot of hope.
and you had a lot of hope when you went into the IEP. The reason why your documentary is so important is because, people will watch it and they'll say, oh, but you see how blatant the non-implementation of IEPs and the denial of an equal education is. And we have a lawyer who's our lawyer who fights in IEPs. She's also always fighting for her son's education. She'll go into an IEP and have to fight the same fight. So to us, it's mind-blowing. It's it shows us that it's very systematic. And I think that watching your documentary, parents will even experience the same sentences. Like some of the things that were said to you were verbatim. Like they must have it must be a script. Like it's verbatim what has been told to us. And Liam is now 14 and Emilio is 7?
He just turned 8.
Just turned 8. And he'll be going into 2nd grade?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what your IEP coming up is about.
Well, they have different names in different states. In New York is the triennial evaluation. In New Jersey is a reevaluation. It happens every 3 years. They do like this whole battery of evaluations for PT, OT, speech, psychoeducational. Tip for parents, you can always deny to have an educational evaluation performed during this process. So we did that because we don't see any value on having that at this point. Like an IQ score doesn't really tell anything about our child or any child. So yeah, that's happening, and this will determine the services for next year and moving forward. We'll do the annuals as they come.
Was that the psych evaluation that you're talking about that does the IQ?
Correct.
Because I want parents to understand. So you can deny that you want, and is that just in this grade or period?
No, you can deny it at any point in through the school years. But it's one of those things that there will be offered. They will say, we're going to evaluate this area, and you can agree or revoke that consent to get that particular evaluation.
Because that's a big one they use against you.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we know, especially if your child has Down syndrome, we know that they're going to qualify for the services. So there's really no point to it.
Yeah, right.
So let's just empower parents with that sentence. If your child has Down syndrome, they already qualify for the services because of their diagnosis. That's part of it. So when they offer you a psych evaluation to get his IQ, deny it. And you deny it because it's has no value, but it has no value to you, but it has value to them to try to then continue to deny him or her their place in a classroom.
Correct.
Mhm.
And you put it in writing, and if you get kickback, then you can use that to file a due process or whatever it's called in your state, and have them explain in writing why they're insistent to go against what your consent is. It's really about isn't really about knowing the language and using the right words.
100%.
That's been one of the biggest challenges for me, is not coming from education and trying to make the film. Everybody speaks in acronyms. So when we were trying to make this film accessible to people that aren't in education, we had to put text on screen to explain what some of the acronyms are. What is an IEP to begin with, and it's a really important part of the story. So it's a learning process. Hilda knows most of it, but it changes from state to state because we actually moved to New Jersey, and there's different terminology in New Jersey from New York.
Man.
And there's also timelines. Like parents don't always know what the timelines are, and there are very strict timelines, because the truth is that the law, although there are gray areas that are used against us, the law is there to uphold your child's equal right to an equal education. That the law is actually there. So there is a system that's actually supposed to be followed, a timeline that's supposed to be respected. And any violation to that timeline, just like any violation to your IEP, can result in, like, you can file a complaint. It is actually the IEP, parents don't understand this, is a legal binding document. And when they decide to not implement or uphold that legal binding document, they're breaking the law. And although it might be a slap on the wrist and it will never go. Here's the thing. It's a slap on the wrist, and teachers usually aren't penalized for it. But I do believe that the paperwork needs to be filed, and we need to take the moment. Send me a letter. I'll help you write the letter to your district, because it needs to be, we need to start having these things like on file. Because one day there will be one of these great students that saw your film, and they're going to go into education or maybe law, and they might find their way to the Supreme Court, and they're going to open up all of these violations, and they'll change the law. Unfortunately, they can't make the changes if we are not putting them in writing to one day be held accountable. The chance of them being accountable right in this very moment is very slim, but if we continue to document it, then one day they will be held accountable, and these things will be used to change the law to reflect what we need it to be.
Absolutely.
Speaking of documenting, let's go to how their documentary ended.
Yes, let's go back to, I know because your story is like, it really hit me so hard in the fact that, I just wanted to come. First of all, I thought it was happening in real time. It was really well done, because I was just like, oh no, it's happened. Like, it's just like, it's happening in real time.
Right.
And I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to be there, like that bad card game that you play and a call. Nope.
What card game?
BS, when you're like,
Just
be in the IEP and be
I
liar.
I see.
Because I think, like, after 11 years, after being beat down and then finding an inclusive environment and having a break, I'm just not polite about it. I'm not rude or mean. I'm respectful and very set in the facts, but I'm also not tolerant to people who are just really having negative effects on our society.
Yeah, I wanted to, strangle some people there, but I also wanted to hug you.
Yeah.
So could you set us up? What was that IEP, and how did you feel going into the IEP?
So, well, I went into the IEP thinking that it was going to be great. because I was in constant communication with his teacher. And ever since he came into her classroom, he was just like learning so much and thriving and making good connections with his classmates. So, like it was really evident that whatever she was doing with him and the kids was great, was working. And like I could see it because at that point when we walk into that meeting, we had been on lockdown for a number of months already, and I was directly working with Emilio to make all the virtual therapy work and all the class work that he had to do. We were just trying to make it happen. And I did get to see firsthand like all the skills he developed on that period of time. And his teacher was very positive in the sense that she totally believed that he belonged in that classroom. So I was coming in like really positive. However, something I learned from the first IEP meeting was to never show up without an advocate. So we always invited our stellar advocate Sarah Jo Soldovieri to the IEP meeting, and it turned out to be the right move.
Was he in an inclusive classroom at that time? Because his can you tell us like the first IEP, he was put in a non-inclusive classroom, right? For the first one, or no?
Yeah, so basically in the film there's 3 IEP meetings. One is the first IEP meeting where we went without an advocate, and we're shocked to learn that Emilio was being recommended for a segregated setting. Then we reconvened and we went with an advocate, and we negotiated this weird kind of situation where Emilio would kind of get this probationary trial period. He would still be recommended for a segregated setting, but they would allow him to go to this one inclusive preschool for a year and to see how he did. So again, going against the spirit of the law, Emilio had to prove himself. It was like a tryout almost.
It read partial integrated services.
Mm-hmm. But we took it because what else were we going to do? We felt like that was the best we could do at that point. And truthfully, we were getting an inclusive setting for him. We just knew that it might not set him up well for the following year. So we go off, we start editing the movie, and we were pretty happy that Emilio was going to be going to a preschool. And a year later, we have our IEP meeting, and as Ida said, that's we were feeling great. We log into Zoom or Microsoft Teams, whatever it was, and we had the cameras rolling just because we thought we were set up for success. We thought Emilio had done everything he had to do. He proved, even though he didn't have to prove himself, he did. And we were just wanted that happy ending for the movie. And part of the way through the meeting, we realized that we were kind of being set up for this kind of sales pitch where Emilio didn't belong in an inclusive setting or to have an inclusive recommendation. But the teacher that had a really close relationship with and had spoken so highly of Emilio went to bat for Emilio. She really went to bat for Emilio, and she said, no, he does belong here. She mentioned that Emilio is doing better than some of her typical students in the class in certain areas, and that he's learning and he's accomplishing everything that you hope a student would accomplish in school. The district administrator didn't know what to say at that point because the teacher had gone against the script that they had kind of set up, and she decided that she needed to consult with her boss. I assume her boss. So she decided to call her up in the middle of the meeting, and forgetting to mute her computer, we heard the entire conversation. And at that moment, our faces just sank, our hearts, our stomachs fell out of us. We just, and nobody on the call knew how to react. There was about 4 or 5 people on the call, and nobody spoke up because we were just listening and shell-shocked that this was happening in front of us. And we heard the conversation. We heard one side of the conversation, and the administrator came back, not knowing that she wasn't muted. and she told us that after having said that Emilio could go in an inclusive setting the following year, she came back from that call saying that we would have to go to due process. And
that she was not changing the 12.1.2 recommendation,
mhm.
which is for a special class.
So we we got off that call and we were just devastated. And unfortunately, that became the ending of the film. And you asked earlier, how did you know when the film was over? And we kind of felt like that was this period of time, like that was a marker. I think we had witnessed something that I had never seen on film, which was segregation in the
In
moment
action.
that it was actually happening. Someone was actually making the decision that a student didn't belong with other students because of the way they're born. And I just thought that how unfortunate it was for Emilio. It was also really fortunate that we got it on camera because people need to see this is happening. And as you said, Liam's story is so similar to Emilio's. And, when you think about all of society, you include the populations with autism, this is happening to so many students on a daily basis. And parents are being told, your student doesn't belong with other students. And most parents say, well, they're professionals. They must know what's best. And, we wanted to go out there and say, maybe they don't know what's best. Maybe you should question what they're saying.
I always tell people to record their IEPs because you will be amazed how arrogant this broken system is. And the fact that they've been doing it for so long that they stand in some weird place of
Confidence, like
I'm just going to do it. And
protected.
And I'm curious, what did that administrator, did they see your film? Like, how did anybody say, by the way, we heard everything that you said? Like, was it like, what was their excuse? Like,
So at the time, I mean, the back of my head was like, well, I have a perfect recording of this moment to use in court.
Yeah.
In due process. That was my thought. So I didn't want to, but I think that, there was enough people on the call that I think the administrator found out that we all heard what had happened. And when we went into mediation, we're not supposed to talk about what happened in mediation, but we had a favorable outcome. And I think it's because they knew we had that recording and it looked really bad. What I did learn recently is that New York is actually using the film to train all administrators. And we were shocked to learn that. We had no idea because the New York DOE has just never been in touch with us about the film. And it's just one of those lives of the film where we kind of learn from all these people reaching out to us randomly and telling us anecdotes about the movie and, oh, we saw the movie. And so it's having an effect in New York City, I hope, because I don't think you can see the movie and repeat what was done in that meeting. I would hope so. But, regarding the particular administrator, we didn't name her because we didn't, I think she was doing what she thought her job was. I don't think she wasn't trying to hurt Emilio. She was just misinformed, and I don't think anybody gets into special education to hurt a child, or it's just they're coming from a place of what I would call misunderstanding. And that's to put it gently. But yeah, we had a lot of animosity towards her. We did not like her, and I really, we wanted the heads to roll. But I thought that she was going to get enough of let's say enough of retribution just by being shown in the film. She's going to have to live with that. So
I agree with you that nobody probably goes into special education wanting to hurt anybody, but
Right.
I think you are letting people off the hook, because we've heard that. I have a job to keep type of vibe, and in fact, those were the
those were
exact
the
words
words
that were used to us. Like, I got a job to keep, where a priority is built, where maybe I don't even. You said they don't want to hurt
Don't be
Emilio.
nice. Just
They don't wanna
just
hurt
say what
Emilio,
you wanna
but
say.
I think they're willing to hurt our kids. They're willing to hurt their kids for themselves, or what, or for what they've bought into. So it is letting them off the hook to say that, yeah, maybe nobody goes into this job to hurt kids, but there are people doing these jobs that are hurting our kids knowingly.
Here's the thing, in all fairness, Liam's 14. I think this role of a parent who's fighting for an education, it unfolds and we use whatever tools we have. And part of the way we cope for this gross negligence is to make it okay. And that's okay. Because if that allows you to not vomit when you sit in on that IEP, if that's your coping mechanism, it was mine. That and a box of wine. No, not joking. But
Right.
I'm not joking. Like, honestly, like, and that is a very real result of having to deal with you feel like you're fighting a battle alone. You're fighting a legal system. You're fighting against segregation and discrimination, things that we see all over but people are canceled. That woman, if she would have yelled at someone and marginalized them, and like I saw a woman in San Francisco do something like even less than that, then just made somebody feel small and tried to get them in trouble. She was canceled, lost her job, lost her business. You make a decision to create the life that you want to live. You make a decision whether or not you're going to go to work. You know what your job is. Once you find out that your job is denying an education to individuals with disabilities, you are buying into it. Because there are people behind you that will either change the system or step into your shoes, but you are making that decision. That is her decision. And it took me a really long time because I couldn't grasp the fact that people were actively telling me my son was less than other people, less than them. My son is one of the kindest people, but he's a 14-year-old, so he's got some snark now. My son is empathetic and loving and works harder than 90% of the people I meet on a daily basis or see on the television. There's like 10% of people where are like, yeah, Liam works at that level. Liam works at that level, not less than.
And one of the
these people
heroes of their IEP is the teacher
who probably
that
got in trouble.
told the truth.
Yeah. And then
Right.
was still
Just telling the truth.
But it's just like, and so for me, it's like, it was a really, and I'll be honest with you, that when I sat in the IP and the words were, and I don't know, we can't find the recording, or it would be like the words were, I said, you denied my son his legal right to an education. You denied him. And she said, I had a job to keep. Just like that.
Wow.
Wow.
Just like that. No thought of consequence, no accountability, no concern what she had done to my son, to my family. Thank goodness we had an inclusive environment to transfer him into, because I would be homeschooling. Like, thank goodness we had that, because I cannot now. I know you don't care about my son. You've admitted it with no thought that there should be any consequence to your flagrant just discrimination and violation of his right. But it took me getting out of that situation and probably being out of it because once I got out, I was like, oh my God, all this trauma that I have experienced. And I had a lot of trauma that I had been carrying with me, that like, I was just like it was coming out. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been suppressing, because you have to suppress it in order to get up, in order to sit across from them and not just do you know, like you have, that's your coping. So in no way, like he can say this, we can say this, because now we're on the other side. And now that we're on the other side, man, I call him on it. Because because I know my son is receiving an education, because my last IEP took 2 hours and it was a collaboration, and never once did they say we're going to take him off curriculum, and he's going into the 8th grade. It was like, how can we support him? What can we do? What do you want? We want him to be independent when he goes into high school, Lori. So let me throw something radical out to you. Like, that's what it was, and that's what it should be. And that is the only thing that gives me this place where I can take a breath and just call people on what they're doing, because they're still going to do it, but I'm damn sure not going to turn a blind eye to it. And I'm going to tell you in my most peaceful way, and sometimes I fail, you're denying my son an education. What you're doing is wrong. How do you sleep at night? This is, I just want you to know what you're doing. I just want you to know. I don't care if it's your job. If you don't like doing it, get a new job or do it differently.
And you're right. And thank you for bringing that up. That
But we can only do it
we
because it's
because we are
safe.
7 years
And we're 7 years.
ahead. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I did want to express how I felt about you letting them off the hook, but I understand where we were
Because you have to see them
at that
this
point.
year,
We
too.
weren't even there. I mean, like, I don't,
And that's
so-
a part of it, that you know that you have to see them this
Yeah,
year.
you have to deal with
And you
this.
know that nothing stops them.
I always have this like every time this time every year when this time of the year comes where we have to revise the IEP, like I just get like this feeling inside that I just really can't shake coming out of like that experience where like somebody that had never known my child was making the decisions. um and so, like I would say, like, thankfully right now he's at a place where they are supportive of him being included, and they are providing all the supports that are needed to make it happen. I feel like I can never let my guard down. I'm always like, I think, we make the documentary and some people think like, oh no, like you're fine, like you got that work out there, and but no, like it just, that feeling just never leaves me, because every year when I'm going to sit at that table, I am just waiting for the worst to happen. um it's just like you said, like the burden that these decisions are putting on us, and like and all the guilt that comes with not like thinking that you're doing the wrong thing for your child when you're doing the right thing, like, but there's always this doubt that is sowed into us, that is just so counterproductive. Like I just wish that when we are in these situations that we are really listening to each other. um because like it was evident that nobody was listening in our case. So I just hope that that things keep moving along. It's not going to be easy always, but that they keep moving in a direction where, like I said earlier, that the resources are like allocated in a way that are beneficial not only for him but for everybody that's surrounding my child.
Well, I hope listeners can get from this too that here are two people that are very knowledgeable,
Strong advocacy.
strong advocates that have made a documentary, and still these are the feelings from after IEPs and before triennials and doubts and pressure, which we say a lot in this podcast, is that here's two people that we've been able to, lucky enough to interview people that we would never have had contact with before and get information that we would have been so difficult to get. And still we go through these doubts and fluxes and I mean, we can only try to give this information out to better prepare other parents. But for those parents to understand that what they're feeling is completely natural, even with maybe all the information at your fingertips.
And that feeling that you have, you shouldn't have to feel that feeling. Like,
Oh.
I feel like at some point these districts need to be held accountable for what they do to families and to parents, because it's not right, and it's totally valid, because you've been in a situation where the rug has been pulled from underneath you, and what is happening to you is a gross violation of a civil right. And when that happens, it's unfathomable. And you're just like in that mode of survival, because like you see across the board anybody's violation of their civil right. I mean, it gets stopped, it gets canceled, it gets called on. There's articles, there's things that happen. There's TikToks. And that's not a joke. Like, it hits social media hard, and people are held accountable in this day and age. And they're not when it comes to the denial of individuals with Down syndrome and disabilities being denied their right to an education. And I think that is, we go into the IEP knowing these people can do whatever they want. And if we don't like it, we have to fight like hell to change it. we have sleepless nights, we have anxiety, we have all of these things, and
And you
and
feel those things. You're feeling
feel
that this
in your
time
body.
of the year too.
Would you? Can I come sit in your IEP? Can
Oh,
I?
man,
Can I come sit
right?
with you? I will sit with you next to your
Oh,
advocate.
absolutely.
I will sit with you next to your advocate, and that's what I felt for you when I watched that documentary. My heart was just like, oh my God,
I
it
almost felt it
shouldn't,
more because it wasn't me. I mean,
because your strength, that you got through
well,
it.
we also
kind of.
experience it together, and then you go, oh, but to see it happen to others, you feel like at least maybe are you taking a hit and other people aren't taking that hit. But it's just so wrong and so destructive and torturous. I mean,
And against the law.
We're
It's
now
against
we're
the
at
law,
a
too.
point of almost where I hate to label it as PTSD, but I feel like
Yeah.
it
Oh,
is it's
totally.
totally valid,
Oh, yeah.
right? And that should not be happening to people that are just trying to do for their kids.
And also it's like kids with disability, like shame on you, shame on you. The two things that I wanted to say, because one, I want to make sure we leave it on a good note, is that regardless of what they try to do or seemingly do to Emilio, you have the last word. You have the last word, and you have more influence in your child's life than any closed-minded, law-breaking district. Liam is in the 8th grade, going into the 8th grade, on curriculum, writing paragraphs, learning science, telling stories, doing plays with his school. No matter what they tell you, no matter what they try to impose you or implement, you have the last word. Just know that. Know that when they're, whatever they're doing, and I honestly will sit in on your IEP if you want me to. I just thought of when you were saying segregation instead of like non-implementation. I want to ask every parent who has an IEP, when they say a non-inclusive environment, to ask that it be, and when you say it in an IEP and you're recording it, it is on the record, and you change it in your document, cross off non-inclusive and write segregated. I want from this point on for us to call it what it is. Tell them they're segregating your child. It's segregation, which is, and let them know it's against the law, and call them on every count of discrimination, because eventually someone's going to feel accountable, and eventually people will stop doing it, because no one likes to be called discriminatory or being told that they're segregating. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to carry that. They'll do it as long as they're not called on it. And I want to ask, like, can we do that? And they'll fight and they'll say, you can't do it. And you can say, I can write whatever I want on this legal binding document.
Yeah.
It's my child's IEP. And you can. And there's even a section on the IEP that you can write your concerns. And your concern can be that this team is deciding to segregate my child from general population and violate his legal right to an equal education. Like, that can be what your concern is. And that is a valid statement to write on your IEP in the box, because then it's on the record.
Well, one thing that we haven't mentioned is that when we were making the film, we actually followed a few stories of parents, and I chose to focus on parents that had children with disability, with Down syndrome. Wesley was a younger child who had to be homeschooled because he didn't have an opportunity. He got taken out of an inclusive setting, and his mom, Kim, said, no, that's not okay. Well, today he's being included in his high school, in a public school in Manhattan, and he's doing great. Liam, who, was also not allowed to go to his local school. His dad fought through the courts years and years and years, and finally at the age of 20 he was allowed to go to his local high school, the first child with a disability to be able to go to his local high school. And he opened the door for a lot of people. So I think the message that I'm trying to get across here is just that there is hope. We just have to keep fighting, we have to keep communicating, and we just have to keep pushing forward.
And there are wonderful places like the Westland District in Oregon, and the Henderson School in Massachusetts, that are doing inclusion and are doing it well. So it is happening. It is happening in some places. So, school leaders and administrators should take note of that and see how they can make it better for their student populations.
Yeah, we were so fortunate to find citizens of the world out here, and they do have the same. They have the inclusive environment, and they've been educating Liam for since middle school, since the end of 5th grade.
We're so honored to have met you and been able to talk with you a couple times now, and I can't express enough how grateful I am for your film and for truly paving a path for people that are going to come behind us.
I think it's important not only for parents of individuals with disabilities or educators to see this film to understand, but like for our families to see the film, to understand what you go through, what the reason why they're seeing what they're seeing, what they actually think Down syndrome is, and where those stereotypes actually come from. You know, you said about that they rise to whatever the diagnosis is, but it's true. It's just I've used the analogy of like if you chain an elephant for so long, you could take the chain off and they'll stay there. It would happen to you, Hilda, or you, Olivier, or Stephen, or I, if we were put under the same circumstances that our children are put under. They wouldn't get that much of a different outcome. You know, we would respond to that stimuli, to that surrounding, to being told, you know, that we can't, that we don't belong. We would respond in the same way. And I think that's what I want parents to know, that it is not the diagnosis. It is not Down syndrome. Yeah, our kids need some supports, but every single student in the classroom needs supports. Every single one. And I just thank you for just shining a light so other people have the opportunity to understand what the real situation is. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for the honesty. Just thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. This has been just a wonderful conversation, and I feel more motivated coming out of this conversation and enlightened. And thank you for your podcast, and thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.